Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Second part of the first Outsiders broadcast for the year.
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. Donald Trump. Donald Trump. Donald Trump. Donald Trump. Donald Trump. Donald Trump. Donald Trump. Donald Trump. Donald Trump. Donald Trump.
Yes, Republican contenders there speaking the name of Voldemort at their debate last week. Maxine, it's an extraordinary moment in politics. There's a piece in the New York Times running now which says this about it as we head to Iowa. The presidential race hurtled over the weekend towards a watershed moment. Voting that will start to reveal the true depth of Americans' desire to cast aside traditional politicians and embrace disruptive outsiders appealing to their passions. Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders, they're sort of cut from the same cloth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, everybody has, no matter what side they're on, they've enjoyed watching the Trump fiasco. I think what surrounded the debate was extraordinary. It wasn't just that Trump pulled out of the debate. He manufactured an event at the same time. And 2 hours before, he gives this conference from his private jet a la Air Force One that's broadcast to America.
It's kind of masterful, really.
Yeah, exactly. And then while he's kind of congratulating himself for donating to war veterans somewhere down the road, his opponents are mentioning him in the debate and giving him more press. So I think there's this just fascination with the steam train that is Donald Trump.
And Aaron, it's a thing that, the Trump phenomenon in particular, we'll come to Sanders in a moment perhaps, but the Trump thing is a thing which has been the subject of ridicule and raised eyebrows. And yet suddenly here we are in Iowa. He's very likely going to win. He's going to steamroll through this primary season, you would think. Suddenly it becomes very real.
Becomes very real and very scary, and it shows just how conservative American politics is. And I used to live in the US, and it is such a rich and intelligent society with this real underlying level of conservatism and paranoia. And, and it's terrible. It's terrible for the world, and it's terrible for America, and many Americans feel that way. But when you've lost your job and your homes, and it's a really tough, brutal society, I guess people just turn to a populist like Trump.
And this is the interesting thing, Terry. We have this phenomenon on both sides of politics. We have Sanders, we have Trump. It's all about that dissatisfaction, that disaffection, that disconnection from traditional politics.
Well, that's true. It actually reminds me of Aldous Huxley in Brave New World said that we have two choices: insanity on the one side and lunacy on the other. And,
good.
We have it, but I just go to Aaron's point and yours too. I think American society is exceedingly conservative, but what worries me as an outsider is that this is also a vote for the leadership of the free world, as they love to say, and we have no say in this. And we actually have a whole range of candidates, except perhaps Hillary Clinton, who have no real sense or connection with the real world, the outside world, the world beyond the United States. And it just frankly scares me that the political process in the States is so broken at the moment that this populist parade is happening.
And yet, Maxine, we do have some limited choice to how much we sort of accept American hegemony. It's something we could, perhaps this will create some distance.
Yeah, in a sense. I just can't see how America is going to continue having the influence on the world that it does with Trump as president. I can't see it. I can't see the world engaging with him in a serious sense. And maybe that's a good thing.
Maybe we'll always have to go to Mars or, move off grid. Start collecting canned goods, everybody, because it's going to be an interesting year. Thank you to our outsiders this morning. We're coming up to 10 o'clock on our end. You'll be listening to Aaron Patrick, his book Credlin & Co., How the Abbott Government Destroyed Itself. He's Deputy Editor of the Australian Financial Review. Terry Barnes, a man who's been Credlin in his time, is Principal now of Cormorant Policy Advice. Maxine Beneba-Clark, author. Foreign Soil 2014 book, and her next, a memoir, The Hate Race. It's almost done, isn't it, Maxine? It's ready to go.
Almost there.
This is Sunday Extra on our end. You may have noticed that we have no first dog on the moon for you this week. Dog is on a protracted rest break. He will, however, be back next week. I promise you that, the guide to modern living. This is Sunday Extra. This last hour, you can get it on SoundCloud. It's a podcast too that you can find on our website. We're also on iTunes and on the radio app.
Okay, so first MoonDog missing in action. Not here at all. Never mind. It's been an interesting little Christmas break. Tony Abbott going off to be paid to address a bunch of Fruit Loop right-wing anti-abortion Americans. And Malcolm turning bull, tolerating Tony Abbott creating firestorms on the backbench, while Malcolm turning bull implements unchanged all of Tony Abbott's silliest policies. It's quite a remarkable spectacle. It's really the only fair word you can use to describe what's been going on. It's a spectacle. Another spectacle we've had the privilege of witnessing is Clive Palmer's commercial implosion with his nickel mine. Price of nickel's fallen through the floor, and it seems he owes $30-something million to the workers and $100 million to the creditors, and I think he's got loans outstanding to about another $100 million or something in that kind of a ballpark. You know, he's $250 million in the wrongness. And in its last couple of weeks before it filed for bankruptcy, his nickel mine donated $25 million or so, roughly ballpark figures, to Clive Palmer's political party, and has been donating money in by the bucket load the whole time that he's been conducting his parliamentary campaign. So yeah, that's been pretty bloody spectacular. What can we say about Invasion Day? You know, I think they should change it to Sheep and Potato Brigade Day, because that's what it actually celebrates. It celebrates the arrival of the Sheep and Potato Brigade. I had a bit of fun on Sheep and Potato Brigade Day. I put in 2.5 hours of elapsed time cobbling up 15.5 minutes worth of video at 18 locations with 2 walkabouts and 35 kilometres of driving to sew it all together. Shout out to Greytex at Dundee in actual Scotland. Greytex, can you pretty please have a look at Celtic Country marketing garbage in Glen Innes? And can you tell me what you think of Gadgets and Wheels' comment from Yorkshire that nowhere in Scotland is there anywhere that has spent as much time and trouble and effort at proclaiming its Celticness as Glen Innes in Australia? Because so far that to my mind is the pick of the comments in the comment thread under the video. Sort of a minor triumph for editing camera shooting sequence style of old school cinematography. I'm very proud of that video, as you can tell. Yeah, so that's how I put in Invasion Day, making a video about Celticness in Glen Innes. I won't tell you what the punchline of the movie revolves around. That way you'll have to go and look at it. Yeah, and like the outsiders, I've just got to talk about the phenomenon of duck fucking Donald Trump. He's so intensely idiocratic that he's succeeding. And I sense not quite a conspiracy, but a confluence of interest, such that what's happening at the moment is that the Islamic State in Levant, ISIL, is working its arsehole out to get Prissydunce Trump elected to the awful office. Because if Prissydunce Trump is sitting there in the awful office at the victory desk and he's got his hands on the nuclear football, because he can't pronounce nuclear, so he calls it the nuclear football, and he's got the launch codes to America's arsenal, then the first thing he's going to do is build a wall to keep the unemployment in Mexico. And then he's going to pick a fight, a loser's war with China over this islands in the Spratly Ocean or Spratly Seas or Spratly Straits or whatever they want to call it. South China Sea, Spratly Islands. And I would kind of suspect that that'll be his chosen course rather than to start sort of repaying the money that the US owes China, because China's been buying American Treasury bonds, because the Chinese don't have any pension system, so they have this cultural imperative to save at least 10% of their income for the whole of their life, so they've got money when they're old. And when they put in the savings banks, the Chinese savings banks have to make their prudential investments in government stocks and bonds, and the only people that can cope with the amount of money the Chinese want to sink into prudential deposits is the American Treasury, which has to borrow money from somewhere because their expenditure has been exceeding their taxes since Keynes invented deficit financing. So if China calls in America's debts, Donnie Trump will probably pick a loser's war with China, and he will wind up with China annexing, say, Alaska, because it's got some pretty good natural resources, and probably Hawaii as well, because that will make some nice holiday resorts. If Australia helps Prissydunce Trump lose in his war against China, we are going to be like Hungary was after they helped Hitler lose to the Soviet Union. I recall 45 years of Hungary being, well, I wasn't alive for the first bits of it, but Hungary was a satellite state of the USSR because it picked a fight on the losing side, chose to fight on the losing side. If China and America have a fight, and if ISIL keeps working to elect Donald Trump, and the way that works is everything that ISIL does, every time they blow something up or shoot something or put a video up on YouTube or hit it on Facebook or somebody declares that they're going over there, everything ISIL does is boosting Trump's ratings with the American polls. He doesn't offer any solutions to anything except cliches and slogans that indicate nothing. He's not telling anybody what his policies are. And his public relations skills compared to all the other people who are running for president, it looks like, Hitler when he got Goebbels working for him. Before Goebbels went to work for Hitler, Hitler was fucking nothing. Goebbels goes in there trying to get elected as Gauleiter of Berlin, and the first thing he did was print up thousands of posters, which was a bifurcated poster. On one side you had Stalin, on the other side you had Hitler. Hitler was nobody. He had nothing. He had 20,000 people in his party or something, and one seat in a rural area. Stalin had the whole of the Soviet Union behind him. By putting that poster up, all of a sudden Hitler was equal to Stalin in the minds of the German population as a choice between the Nazis and the communists. Donald Trump has come out of nowhere, a laughingstock, and all of a sudden, he's sort of leading the Republican contenders by 11 points or 14 points or something. People say to me, the Americans aren't silly enough to elect Donald Trump. I remember when they elected President fucking Ronald Reagan Zap. Anybody here remember the time he was addressing a Republican convention and he goes up there and he taps the microphone? Excuse me, testing. I've introduced legislation outlawing the Soviet Union. We commence bombing in 15 minutes. Testing. And the whole hall went totally fucking silent because the demented senile geriatric up there with his hands on the microphone had his hands on the launch codes in the other hand. He had the power to do it. They are totally dumb enough, totally thoughtless, reckless, patriotically enthusiastic enough to jump onto Trump's bandwagon, and they will elect that mad bastard. I can see it coming. It's merely a matter of how much he wins by. Like they said on The Outsiders, start buying a few extra cans of baked beans, and stock up on toilet paper and cigarette lighters, because it's about to go pear-shaped. I was going to talk about the Zika virus, but I'll do that in a separate dedicated video. Ebola's gone, they say, but they keep getting sporadic cases. I think the biosphere's decided to cull the humans, and it's coming at us with all sorts of angles and dangles and confluences of things going separately critical. We're coming to a cusp. We are in the interesting times, the ones of which the Chinese curse warns us. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.